Happy draft day, everyone. The Boston Celtics have already made a number of moves. Might they be on the verge of making a really big one featuring either Jaylen Brown or Derrick White? I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. We've got the latest on a developing situation as we get closer to tonight's draft. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, this has been a wild lead up to the draft already, and I have a feeling we're going to see some more fireworks today.
You know what? Forget the draft. I want to talk about how you cheated on me on this channel last night.
Oh, because Keith popped in.
Yeah. I was like, firstly, you didn't even tell me you were alive. I was in bed anyway. And then I'm like listening on the side and I'm like, wait, Keith is joining.
That was last minute, very impromptu. I'm like, I got all these basketball thoughts in my head. You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go live. And then Keith sent me the "you up" text. And so I was like, all right, go ahead, man. Jump on here. Let's go. Let's go.
It was cool to have him on. We had talked about that for a while. That's the first time he's ever been over here. So it's cool.
That was a good time. That was a good time on the live last night. You guys watched it on the channel here. You can check that out over in the live section. And again, don't forget to subscribe right here to the Basketball Bulletin. So let's get to the latest on the Jaylen Brown situation. According to Brett Siegel, Jaylen Brown has been a hot name trending in trade talks around the league. And the Utah Jazz have made an aggressive push in the last couple of days to acquire him. Also mentions Derrick White as a target by teams with top 10 picks. This is part of why we think there's going to be a lot of activity today and tonight, because the teams that have these lottery picks, these top 10 picks even, are willing to move them and are looking to move them. So I think we're going to get some real activity. The Raptors involved with something with the 9th pick for Derrick White. The Utah Jazz, almost certainly that would include the 5th pick in the draft going out in a package for Jaylen Brown. And we'll talk about what that deal could potentially look like in just a moment. But Donnie, do you see the Celtics? They've made it clear they're listening on these guys, on Jaylen Brown and Derrick White. They're not looking to really trade them. Do you think a team just overwhelms them with an offer, kind of like we saw the Orlando Magic do with Memphis and Desmond Bane?
Yeah. Do you know what picks they have like available to offer aside from this one? Because I would imagine it would be more than that. But yeah, them listening to calls is normal. If you're Boston, I think that's what you need to do, because we had said it when Tatum went down, you know, the aspirations, they're not going to be there for this year. You have to be within reason. You weren't going to get all the way there without Tatum this year. But I mean, you'd have a gap year, and so you'd retool this year, but you'd come back next year in a position to be able to do so. But with new ownership, with the second apron, the salaries, all that stuff, there was a lot they had to do, and we knew they would move a couple of the guys. But I would still imagine Jaylen Brown is still on the team until he's not. But this is interesting. It's possible a team comes in and is like, hey, you want all this stuff? Give us Jaylen Brown. I'm just curious that the fact that that's Utah. The thing with Utah is that like people have been expecting them to tank again. And even over the last couple of years, they've done this thing where they've been like a feisty team for a quarter of the season, then decide to randomly tank a couple of years ago. And then they got railed at the end of last year when they tanked and had the best odds and fell all the way as low as they possibly could. And they said after that, I think it was Austin Ainge, he said, yeah, we're just kind of done with that. So I guess they want to be competitive this year because,
and they do have plenty of future draft capital coming in. They've got the picks coming in from Minnesota, from the Rudy Gobert trade. They've got the 2027 first from the Lakers, from the Russell Westbrook trade. So Utah's got a lot of draft capital if that's what the Celtics are looking for. Now, I do think that there could be a situation here where Utah says, no, we really want to pivot. And that would, Donnie, if that happens, and Utah is truly going all in and they're a buyer on a player like Jaylen Brown, that would mean 15 of the 15 teams in the Western Conference would all fancy themselves as playoff teams, because we already saw Portland make a win now move with the Drew Holiday trade. I thought it was a huge mistake, but they made it. We've seen now Utah potentially being in on Jaylen Brown. We would see literally every team in the Western Conference going into next season with an eye towards making the playoffs, and no one attempting to rebuild. That would be, I would have to imagine, a first in NBA history for an entire conference to be going for it, trying to win right now.
They just, everyone's like, we're going for it. I don't know why. They see OKC right there and they're like, yeah, let's go for it. I don't know, but they apparently are scared of first round picks, scared of the lottery picks. I don't know, next year, whatever's going on here. But I don't mind it. I don't mind the parity. I just would love if it was even on both sides. Like, I'd be happy if all 30 teams said, let's go for it.
And
right?
part of it is unforeseeable in terms of the injuries that have hit the Eastern
Yeah,
Conference with
that's true.
Tatum,
That's true.
with Lillard, with Halliburton now, and all unfortunate. But yeah, right. I mean, if you're a Western Conference, like we've said, the battle, the fight to be the Western Conference team that gets to move into the East when expansion comes is going to be fierce because there's a real advantage to being an Eastern Conference team right now. But this is what Brian Windhorst had on a Jaylen Brown trade. Said, I'm highly skeptical that they would trade him, but their actions are making me wonder. It makes me wonder if they're not looking at something else to bring in more talent because the talent drain has been significant. I understand when they signed Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in those contracts, they knew they were in for an onerous situation. It wasn't like they did it in the dark. They knew there was going to be a day where they wouldn't be able to have this roster at this expense. And this is what the new collective bargaining agreement does, everybody, right? The new CBA, the two-tier system, the second tier apron is going to cause teams to make difficult choices. The Celtics have already made a couple of them, parting with Drew Holiday and then Kristaps Porzingis we saw happen yesterday. He said, in 2026 doesn't make sense for an NBA team where you have two players making over 150 million because that's where these guys are. I don't know the answer. The league is trying to figure it out. This is what the Celtics are figuring it out. And the reason why today is the decision you're going to get is because it's teams in the top 10 making offers. You could potentially get replacement players and draft picks. I don't know if Brad Stevens and his staff love these guys at the top of the draft, but maybe they do. That's what's on the table. So, Donnie, what we're saying is if there's going to be a trade here with Jaylen Brown, it's going to happen before or during tonight's NBA draft because that's going to be a big part of the deal. If it's the Utah Jazz, that fifth pick is going to be involved. There would probably be other pieces that would be going out as well. Could that be Lauri Markkanen? If I'm Utah, I probably want to pair Jaylen Brown with Lauri Markkanen. But what about expiring contracts? What about John Collins? What about Colin Sexton? Could those be pieces that get put into a deal with significant, the fifth pick, future picks, draft capital for Jaylen Brown? And then the Utah Jazz are building around a team that's Jaylen Brown, Lauri Markkanen. Is Walker Kessler in the deal? We don't know. But that could be a really interesting pairing moving forward and would signal to the rest of the league that Utah is done tanking.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is that if you're Boston, Jaylen Brown makes so much money, you've got to send out the salary to match. And that Lowry contract, I know they want to be good, but that Lowry contract screams go to Boston to me.
Well, I mean, but the Jazz do have a little bit of cap space, so there's some flexibility there.
Okay.
So they could take back a little bit of money, Utah can. And then if you are moving your expirings, like you've got what 26 million here with John Collins, you get up to 40 million with Clarkson. I don't know. I mean, I think Utah can find ways to make it work without having to part with Lauri Markkanen, at least financially. And then they have enough draft capital where maybe that entices Boston. And maybe Boston, if they, because I think the threat for Boston is Jason Tatum comes back a year from now. Do we want him walking into a ghost town? Do we want him walking in and going, who are all these kids? Where the hell did these kids come from? Right.
Like, that's my next question. Like, do they have to keep an eye on that?
For sure.
Tatum's going to come back expecting to contend. So like, you can't just gut the roster right now, can you?
But if you could get enough draft capital, future draft capital from these teams, you trade Derrick White, you get the 9th pick back from the Raptors, plus other stuff. Of course, there's other things that are going to be included there. You get Jaylen Brown back. You trade Jaylen Brown and you get the 5th pick back. Are you able to then at some point you figure out of all this stuff that you got? And I do think it's a seller's market right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're able to then flip some of those things to go and rebuy on the market before Jason Tatum comes back. Maybe there's a way that you reset your books and you end up, I don't want to say a net positive, but you end up financially in a much better situation with a few interesting young pieces that you picked up and a team that may still be able to go and do something in the Eastern Conference. That could be, now it requires a lot of heavy duty construction in order to do something like that. But maybe that's what the Celtics are looking at. You never know.
The Celtics just found a way to move like 70 million in salary in 2 days. I'm not worried about them. They can pull off whatever they want to do. But I do wonder if do they have their pick for next year? I assume that they do.
The Celtics, yes, they have their 2026 pick. So that could be a factor in all of this too.
Yeah.
They get a bunch of young kids. Next thing you know, they've got the 5th pick in this draft. I don't know. Maybe it's Ace Bailey, even though he's trying to tell certain teams not to draft him. You get the 5th pick in this year's draft. You get the 9th pick of this year's draft. Maybe that's Kamen Malawach. Who knows who that's going to be, right? We'll find out tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're bad enough this next year without Jason Tatum to maybe you get AJ DeBonsa.
Okay, stop. That's enough.
That could be what the Boston Celtics are looking at right now. That's an insane scenario, but it's kind of plausible too right now.
I am typically the one that tells you this is the Bulletin. We got to be impartial, but like, man, it's fighting. I'm fighting real hard.
I'm wearing a Dodger cap. You think I'm going to be partial to the Celtics? I'm just saying. That's hard. The ceiling play. That is the best case scenario for what the Celtics are maybe looking at right now. Is they go into next summer with a bunch of young talent from this draft, a few interesting players, and maybe a top draft pick in next year's draft as well.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is that you could be looking at this from then, and then maybe some of these guys have played into different values and stuff, and they can flip they don't even need to make the pick next year. Like if they're bad and that's a high pick, they could flip it. Like well, I mean, I think that, that's the right decision. If you're not going to be able for them to make it all the way, which is what they truly want to do, why not? You've got this opportunity. Why not retool in a big way?
Take a gap year.
And just take that gap year. Now the questions now are White and Brown, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What do they do with those guys? Because right now, those are the two guys that teams are heavily pursuing. Donnie, we've been talking about this, about the market, about how many buyers there are on the market, and that maybe some team will become a surprise seller. Boston's selling on Porzingis and Drew Holiday. Not a surprise. Those deals obviously are pending and haven't been pushed through yet, and that's why they're still sitting there on their roster right now. But selling on those two guys, not a surprise. But I've been hypothesizing for a while that with so many buyers on the market, there would be a few teams that'll look around that maybe we wouldn't predict would sell on certain players and say, you know what, the value's so great, why not sell and see what we can get? And that's exactly what happened with Memphis and Desmond Bane, who just got overwhelmed by 4 first-round picks and said, okay, if this is what we're getting, I guess we'll sell. Boston could be in the same situation. They could be a surprise seller in that it would be a surprise they move on from Jaylen Brown and or Derrick White. But again, it depends on the return. I still think it's unlikely overall that they move on from those guys. But man, there sure is a lot of noise around this. And I think you can make a real argument for why they should do it.
Yeah, I was just about to say there's a lot of noise. And where there's smoke, maybe there's fire. Who knows? It's out there. It's possible. So I guess we'll just have to see. But that would be pretty crazy if he does get traded. And also the fact that Utah is just trying to go all in right now and be a competitive team, which is, like I said earlier, I don't necessarily mind that. I like the parity. I think that's cool. I just wish it was just, even across the league. But obviously, understandably, not all teams can be in the same place.
Do away with conferences. It's time. It's time. Do away with conferences, seed 1 through 20, and call it a day. As soon, you know what? When we expand the next couple of years, it's time. Conferences.
Oh man,
bye. Let's get rid of them. Now the problem is all the East teams are going to vote no on that proposition.
Yeah,
all the East teams will vote no, and I don't blame them. But it's time.
Oh boy,
it's time. All right, everybody, give us your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about a potential Jaylen Brown trade? Don't forget to subscribe right here to the channel as well. Going to be a crazy day around the NBA, and we're going to be covering everything here on the Basketball Bulletin. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.